Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again after a short hiatus for a annual excursion to Atlanta, Georgia for the ProgPower USA Festival, edition number 23, which we both had the pleasure of attending and will most certainly be the focus of this week's podcast. But before we get to all things ProgPower, how are you, my friend?
Good. It's been a real whirlwind since the last time we spoke. Our last episode was actually something we dug out of the archives. That was a Patreon-only exclusive episode we recorded a while back on Dream Theater's Change of Seasons. Gave me a little extra time to recover from a little bit of the COVID that I was, going around at ProgPower as it tends to do. So I'm kind of on the tail end of the recovery thing. I'm feeling pretty okay, but I wanted. There was a time a couple of days ago where my voice was pretty shot, and so it wouldn't have been a very pretty memorable performance for me anyway. So I was ready to talk about this literally the day I got home, the night I got home on Monday, but my voice was not ready to talk about it, unfortunately.
And that was, in fact, the plan. But rather than release the episode a week late, we figured we'd dip into the archives, kind of have a surprise episode, which is exactly what we did. And then we'll just release this a week late and just push everything back or so, just to kind of stay on pace or what have you. So this will be coming out for everybody on Patreon very, very soon, obviously, and everybody else will be getting this on September 15th. And then we'll go back to our regularly scheduled format, and I'll announce next week's episode at the conclusion of this podcast. We'll talk all things that we've been listening to and all the news. We'll bring all that back next week. But for now, I think we should just dive into what was, in many ways, a really, really good 4-day festival. And I say that just before we get into each of the bands and the sets that we liked and whatnot. What I think stuck out to me, like an overarching theme for the week, was that for the most part, every band sounded good. Like the sound was just spectacular, and the performances themselves were really good. And even the one or two bands that I was not crazy about, I can appreciate why fans would have gone nuts for those particular sets. And kind of going through everything, I realized I only missed one band in its entirety. There's a couple of bands that I cut short, but I caught most of the full performances, and I'm really happy that I did, because there was stuff that I was not expecting to kind of enjoy that I loved, and stuff that I loved that I was blown away by, and stuff that just by and large, I'm actually going to go back to and listen to more of, solely as a result of the excellent performances that took place just over a week ago. So let me start by kind of just setting the table. We had talked about this a bit in our Patreon exclusive episode for August, but did you expect to watch as many of the sets as you did? And I asked the question because you caught almost everything, which I was pleasantly surprised by, and I hope that it was as impactful for you as it was for me, just because, like I said, we had our priorities and we had certain things that we knew we weren't going to miss, but then there's other things that I think were on the maybe list that might have even impressed in many ways.
I had every hope of seeing as much as I could, but I did not expect to see as much as I did. I pretty much saw, with the exception of a couple of like running out to grab a drink or go use the bathroom or whatever. I didn't miss much of anything outside of Disillusion's entire set, because I was backstage with the band that I had sponsored. I missed the last 4 songs of Angra's set, and I missed most of Pagan's Mind set. I think I was stuck around for the first 4 or 5 songs, and then I had pretty much reached my absolute limit. Plus, I think I also was recognizing that I was starting to feel pretty run down, and it was time to call it. But pretty much everything else I saw in its entirety, and part of that, part of the reasoning for that was this podcast. I really wanted to be informed of everything and really speak with some sense of authority on what was played and not just, hearsay or what I heard somebody else say. So, 95% of this festival I bore witness to in real time.
And those bands that you missed, I will actually fill in the gaps because I saw all of those sets. So I look forward to that, including Pagan's Mind, which was not something that I expected to do going into the fest. And I've got some strong thoughts about that, but we'll certainly get there as we kind of wrap up the festival, because that was Saturday night and we still have to talk about Wednesday and Thursday. So unlike the Patreon episode, I'm going to get this right in terms of the order, and I'm going to make sure that we talk about this the way it actually went down.
That was the dress rehearsal.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not calling it an understudy. Charles, we love you, but I got this one this year. So I'm gonna say this. We flew down on Tuesday, went to go see the Braves game, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Chris Sale is just an absolute master. He's doing it again as we record. He's beating the Dodgers and well on his way to his Cy Young, which is well deserved. But short of that, more striking than anything else was that I think I slept better on this trip than I have in the last probably 20 ProgPowers combined. And
Same.
And that made for a phenomenal experience for me because I was really present and in the moment for all of these sets. And it really kind of started right away on Wednesday night with Darkwater. As I had mentioned, this was a band I was very much looking forward to seeing. The last time they played ProgPower, their only U.S. show, they only played 4 songs, and that was disappointingly short because they were so good for those 4 songs, and they were finally back. And I was excited to see them. I don't know if you had the same impression, but I thought the set kind of started off a little slow. It was the sound wasn't perfect at first. It was a little flat to me, but by the 3rd or 4th song, they really started kind of cooking with gas. And by that point, I was thoroughly impressed by this band. I had very high expectations. I was looking forward to seeing them immensely. And once they got the sound figured out, and they got it figured out fairly quickly, about a quarter of the way through the set, we were off to the races. They played stuff from all 3 of their albums. They even played a new song, which they debuted for the first time. And I just thought it was a really enjoyable set. The only criticism I have is that this band needs to just put out more material a little more frequently because they are on the precipice of being something big in this genre. It's just that they don't sustain it with enough music over the course of time. So I don't know that people are like paying attention.
Yeah, that makes sense. I thought that from a performance standpoint, they were excellent musicians. Everything sounded really good. Like you said, once the mix got going, which I guess isn't unusual for the first band of a 4-day festival. I enjoyed this set quite a bit. I just thought that it made for, sometimes it's tricky to kind of have a more proggy band open things up, and because you don't want it to be like a lower energy kind of vibe. And I think that they really were a good choice. We'll see throughout the weekend, or at least, most certainly the next on day 2 that we kick things off with, probably one of the proggiest sets of the whole 4-day, 4-day festival. But I thought this was a great choice for an opening band. In retrospect, I think I had even said to you at one point that I might have flipped Victorious and Darkwater and started with Victorious because I think that because they were more of a high energy power metal band. I think that might have been a better way to just get everybody a little bit like warmed up. But it was, I think it worked out okay. I just think that going from Victorious to Dream Evil was like 2 kind of like really power metal heavy bands in a row, and I think that it would have made more sense to kind of go, power prog on day 1. But I think that's a small nitpick. I thought Darkwater did a really good job opening, and I was happy to hear they finished the set with Alive Part 2, which I believe was my song of the week when we reviewed the Human album. But they also did a nice job of touching on the earlier albums as well. And like you said, debuting a new song in silence. So really good way to kick things off. And I don't think that they took anything away from the Circus Maximus performance, because I know we had talked about like the bands being kind of in a similar vein. And I think kind of having them a little bit further apart, I think also helped. But yeah, great opener, and cheers to Darkwater. That was a good way to open things.
For all intents and purposes, they were the 2 slot in terms of stature, but because of the sound issues and I guess the complex nature of their setup, they had to open the show because they didn't want to run into the same issues, from what I understand, as they did the last time they played, and they certainly wanted to give them the full hour that they were deserved. But in terms of ranking or stature, I think that you could easily make the argument that they were the 2 spot, may have been better suited for that spot to kind of alternate things like you said. But nonetheless, we finally got a full Darkwater set. I'm pleased. I can only hope that we see them again. And then the complete antithesis of Darkwater takes the stage with Victorious. What were your thoughts on this? I know that this kind of power metal is, certainly in your wheelhouse, but at the same time, they dial it up to 11.
Yeah, it's, I've made no bones about it that it's a little bit high on the cheese factor, but I thought they did a good job. I mean, I thought that in general, the set list had a very kind of samey nature to it. However, at one point they did play Silent Symphony from the Dream Chaser album, which I was surprised because I really feel like they hadn't been playing anything outside of their Space Ninja / Dinosaur Warfare suites. What a weird thing to add the word suites to, but that I thought that stood out. And also I think if that was the song I'm thinking of, there was also kind of a slower, like ballad-esque type of tune that was I thought like was the best sounding tune they played, and just I don't know, there was something about it that I think just like kind of left the samey nature of everything up to that point, and kind of made it stand out a little bit. So I thought it was solid. But like I said, I think in a perfect world, I probably would have opened with these guys and then went to Darkwater. Again, small nitpick, but they were solid. They're never going to be my favorite band in the world, but I thought it was definitely fun. The lead singer had the American flag painted on his face and stuff, so they were into it, and they had one of the better exclusive shirts, which with the T-Rex with the American flag and everything. So it was cool. I feel like we probably wouldn't have had a chance to see this band play in the U.S. without a ProgPower. So I'm kind of glad that we were able to see them. So good stuff. What did you think?
I want to echo your sentiments on the shirt. The shirt was great. I almost bought the shirt, even though I walked out of the set after 3 songs. And
I bought Justin that shirt, and he wasn't even there. He just wanted the shirt.
Nice. I like it. I actually, like I said, I walked out after 3 songs. It wasn't terrible. I just knew I was in for a long night, and ultimately this was the one band that I really didn't see the whole set for. There was one band I skipped entirely, which I'll get to later on, but it was not on Wednesday. I just didn't feel the need to sit there for the whole thing, and it's a shame because I would have loved to have heard Silent Symphony. It's actually a great song, but they started playing it, I guess, after I had walked out, and I didn't realize that they were playing it, and by then it was too late. So I stayed for it. I'm happy I saw that. I caught about 15 or so minutes of their set. I got the flavor for it. I have a feeling that this will not be the last time that we see them, whether it's touring the U.S. or 70,000 Tons or something like that. So I do think that the chance to see them will always be there again. And if not, I got a taste of it. Not my favorite set. I thought that of all the sets that I did see, I think it had the worst sound. It wasn't bad. It was just a little muddied. And so given some of the sound that we would be fortunate enough to hear not only later this night, but the rest of the festival, it just missed some of the boxes that I was hoping for. It was fine. It was not bad. I would watch them again. I'm not offended by it. It's a phrase I like to use here on the podcast, but I just nothing that I had to stay for, and I knew it was going to be a long 4 days.
I'm with you. I'm with you on the sound. And also not to. I'm going to try not to belabor this point throughout the episode, but live keys would have helped here.
Oh, absolutely, and the bands that had it definitely benefited from it. So I'll just say that they didn't have it, and it was
and they're a pretty synth heavy band, so I feel like it would have added to the proceedings, but. I feel like that was a conversation that came up a lot at the time we were there, and so I'm going to try not to belabor the point. But if you have the opportunity to use live keys, I just hope that you do, because it's worth it. I think it just gives the sound just a fuller sound, a fuller live sound.
I don't think anybody would disagree with that, especially keyboard players. It's a necessary evil, and it adds that extra dimension. And then after Victorious left the stage, after canceling 3 prior ProgPower appearances, Dream Evil took the stage. I believe it was their first U.S. show in like nearly 20 years. I think they last played the U.S. in 2006. I had never seen them. They had certainly never played this festival. And although I'm not the biggest Dream Evil fan, there were a number of people and a number of listeners of the podcast that, quite frankly, are big fans. And I know they were ecstatic. And in many ways shocked that the band was actually playing the show. So I stayed for this. I didn't miss a note, and I'm glad I didn't, because even though I will never profess to be the biggest fan of the band, I do love the first 1 or 2 albums. I think they're very good. Some of the later material, I could take it or leave it, but they were great live. And I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the set. To say nothing of the fact that after, again, this heralded performance, they ended it with 2 songs with Snowy Shaw playing Chasing the Dragon with Snowy Shaw on drums, which is maybe my favorite Dream Evil song. And then, of course, the classic Book of Heavy Metal with him doing lead vocals or sharing lead vocal duties. The set just, it was, again, I will never say this is my favorite band. I probably am not going to go back and listen to some of the newer albums, but the set was great. And I'm glad, because this set was, as a lot of the sets were recorded by fans on their phones or different devices. I'm going to post the set this week. I believe it's there to watch in its entirety, and it's just worth catching. I was pleasantly surprised, and kudos to Nathan for I guess not giving up on this one, because I think he left a lot of people happy.
Yeah, I love this set. I was expecting it to be good, and I think it was even better than good. I think that the crowd was electric, and I think part of it was the lore that, not L-U-R-E, but L-O-R-E, that this band and ProgPower had created over the years of will they, won't they, and much to, I think, Keith's excitement, they did. And I thought it was a nice choice of songs, great mix of new and old. I loved the last 2 songs, especially with Snowy. I thought that was a really fun surprise, because as far as I know, there was no prior word that was going to happen, although he did say he was going to be there for one of the previous appearances that ended up being canceled. So I guess it wasn't too much of a shock, but it was a very pleasant surprise. Really fun set, sounded great. I enjoyed this a lot, and I thought they really brought it. I think I at one point said to somebody that this is what Primal Fear would be like if they were better.
Yes, I don't disagree, and also not having lineup issues that we discussed a couple of weeks ago. But good performance. I'm happy I got to see them. Wasn't my favorite set of the weekend. I'm not even sure if it was in the top 5, but I will say I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was, and I'm happy that I saw it. And then the night would continue with a blistering Circus Maximus set. This was a band that has just always been so good live, and I don't think this performance was any different. I thought the set list they chose was really good, just a blend of all their albums, focusing on those first 3. Before I get into any more details, do you have any thoughts? Because I know that this was one that you were looking forward to immensely.
Yeah, by the time this set came on, I was like thoroughly buzzed. I was drinking vodka sodas all day. It was the only day that I really partook in any alcohol. But first day back at ProgPower, I probably had A couple more than I should have, but no harm, no foul. So I was feeling toasty by the time this set happened, and I was standing on the floor. I was pumped, and the set list was outstanding. They played Sin from First Chapter. They played 5 tracks from Isolate, 5 tracks from 9, a couple from Havoc, and a Queensryche cover and Screaming in Digital. I personally, I don't think I have much to complain about as far as the set list goes. My wish was I really wanted to hear what was the song from the first album? I think I had mentioned it. Glory of the Empire. It's one of my all-time favorite Circus Maximus songs. But you know what? The set list was pretty sick as is. Jorn Vigo Lostad from Pagan's Mind came out for I Am. This is just a band that is so good live, and this is, I think, the 4th time I had seen them at ProgPower. I wasn't blown away by the sound quality, but
yes.
But that said, like at least compared to the previous times I saw them, it was just that impressive, and there would be some really impressive sounding bands on this weekend. But that said, it didn't take away anything for me. I just still thought the band is just so tight. And it was their first show live together in quite some time. And I didn't really sense a ton of rust, which is impressive. So yeah, those are my thoughts. This was one of the sets I was most excited for, and they didn't disappoint.
I'm glad you brought up the sound here because I thought the sound was all right, but the keyboards and the guitars, when I know they were going to solo, they didn't really raise them up in the mix. So the solos got drowned out. The sound was good. The sound was not bad. It's just that because I know the songs pretty damn well, I also know when and who is about to solo, and I didn't feel like those were being highlighted in any way. And I was a little bit disappointed in that because I know how perfect this band can be in a live setting. That said, you could still hear every instrument. It just, the mix, I would have mixed it a little bit differently, and I thought the set itself was great. You mentioned Jorn Vigo's appearance on I Am, one of my favorite songs, so that was really cool to see. And all in all, I thought that they were a really nice compliment to Angra because of just the prog and the power going back to back. So it kind of just, in many ways, was the cap of the prog performances, and then Angra would come on the stage and do their full headlining set, which was awesome. So kudos to Circus. They could play every year. I don't think I would ever complain because I don't get tired of them, which is a real testament to their live performance. And as I said, then we get to Angra, and I know you didn't make it for the whole thing for this set. I assume it was fatigue that just kind of got to you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I had been standing the whole day. So like I was at that point, I was just like, I was in the entryway, just kind of leaning up against the wall, drinking water at this point. And man, I enjoyed the hell out of this. I stuck around for the first 11 songs, and I promised myself I would stay to hear Time, and then once they played Time, I was like, all right, I need to get off.
I don't blame you. That would have been a good that's where I would have cut it as well. And I actually had the fleeting thought to do that, but I did stay for the whole thing. And I'll say this is my 3rd time seeing Angra this year, as luck would have it. I caught them twice on 70K in the winter, and then of course this show. You know, they're like a well-oiled machine at this point. And even though I know the set list and I kind of knew what they were going to do, I was not expecting any grand surprises. The reality is when those lights go off and you hear the beginning of Crossing, you can't help but get excited, even 25, 30 years later. And then when they go into Nothing to Say and Angels Cry, I just think that is such an it's almost such a perfect way to start a set list that you only get disappointed from there, which I know sounds crazy, but that's just because those 2 songs are amongst the best power metal songs of all time. And so I never got bored. Even the newer material comes off really well live. Fabio sounded very good, but you know, they just start with such a climax that like you can only go down from there. But that's just a testament to how amazing those first two Anger albums are more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I love the whole beginning of this, even like beyond Angels Cry, because I think Tide of Changes is probably my favorite song from Cycles of Pain, and I was really expecting Soto to make an appearance on this. Not that he needed to, but it would have been cool. But I thought that first three, Nothing to Say, Angels Cry, and Tide of Changes, it really opened up the set list strong. And at that point, I just was kind of like, it was like they went on to cruise control, and I was just enjoying these selections from like newer Angra, older Angra. They plucked a couple of tunes from Temple of Shadows. So like I like loved getting to hear Rebirth. And so, yeah, at time I kind of called it. I would have liked to have caught the rest of the set. They played Cycles of Pain, Bleeding Heart, Waiting Silence, Carry On, and Nova Era. But from what I saw, everything sounded really, really great. The band really gelled well together. Fabio was great, like you mentioned. This was really just kind of like a nostalgia thing for me. But like you said, like just kicking off of those first two songs, I was in nostalgic heaven during the beginning of the set.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I don't really have anything to add. What I'll say is after Angra was over, I was exhausted and I slept like a baby. And I say that because, without the courtyard and having that main area to congregate, it has changed the festival in many ways. I won't say it's better or worse. I'll just say it's different. And so when I woke up on Thursday, I was ready to go because I got a good night of sleep, and that would continue for the, I didn't have that like 4 days of like, I'm totally out of it type of thing. I was very present, like I said. And by the time we get to Thursday night, I was eagerly awaiting Nick's arrival. And I say that because he had never been to the festival. But one of the bands that I was looking forward to most was No Spoon. And that was the opener on Thursday. And I had kind of set lofty expectations for what the set was, but at the same time, I said, this band doesn't play live a lot, so I kind of have to temper those expectations at least a little bit because how good could it possibly be? Whew. This was awesome, and I don't know that the music lends itself live as well as, at least in parts, because there's parts of this album that are a little bit mellow, low-key, almost interlude in terms of its presentation, and I really wish they would have had a live keyboard player on. But at the same time, James Nelson is a monster, and this would not be the last that we would see of him this weekend. And the band just sounded so tight. So for a band that does not play a ton live, the future is really bright. And I honestly, I just couldn't help but think to myself, if this band ever went on tour with Dream Theater, they would absolutely blow up. Or if they went on tour with Haken, these guys would be the next big household name for prog rock or prog metal, assuming, of course, that the next album is just as good of a heavy hitter as the first one.
It's absolutely well said. This set had no reason to be as good as it was. I mean, seriously, the absolute masterful musicianship on display. This outstanding just vocal performance by vocalist Philip Rich. But like Cole and James and Paul, like all of them were just incredible. They brought this wonderful album to life that we had, talked about in previous, on a previous episode. The promoter, Milton, was gracious enough to give them an extra 12 minutes, I believe it was 12 or 13 minutes, so that
That's right.
he could play this entire album start to finish, which had never been done before. Agreed that, again, like live keys probably would have put it over the top, but considering that a lot of the keyboard stuff was on a track, they really, really sounded pretty incredible for just four guys standing on stage. It was really, really impressive. And I think that this is like, when the idea to have this band that not a lot of people had heard of opened the festival. And, I think a lot of people listened to the album and they were convinced, but the question was, could this be pulled off live? And I think they answered the call, and I believe they got a standing ovation, and it was well deserved. Just a really outstanding performance. I sat in the crowd right behind the soundboard, right in the middle, and just took it all in. And it was just like such an experience. So shout out to Knops for bringing this band to our attention, and then us bringing it to Milton's attention, and then Milton bringing it to everyone's attention. So really great stuff. And yeah, like you said, we haven't seen the last of James on this weekend, and I look forward to discussing his next appearance. But yeah, this was really great. I know that this was like kind of a big thing for you. Like, you had very high expectations. Did they meet your expectations?
It was close. I think the keyboards definitely the lack of live keys took me out of it just a touch. But short of that, yes, it was great. And in some ways it was better than I expected. And then, of course, it just was a little bit of a letdown because I thought they were going to have someone playing keys. But I had the pleasure of watching the set with Knops, and I was just looking at him, and there were certain points where we didn't say anything to each other. We just kind of looked at each other and smiled, and then looked back at the stage. And that happened about 2 or 3 times. And it was almost surreal that we were actually seeing this, because it was my album of the year last year. In many ways, they have no right to be playing a festival where they have bands like Circus Maximus and Angren and stuff like that. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just they don't have the pedigree that some of these other bands do. I mean, even Darkwater on the first day, they opened the festival. They've been around for 15 years. They've got 3 amazing albums. But what they proved is that they do belong with all these bands. And I just hope that the next album hits people as hard as this one did, because if they dedicate the time to touring and getting out there and opening for some other bands, they're going to open up a lot of eyes.
Couldn't agree more.
And then they're kind of piggybacked with, in many ways, a symphonic metal band in Temperance, which was a nice contrast. And it actually was a nice 1-2 punch to kind of kick off the day. I know you're a fan of this band. I will say that I watched the entire set. I thought it was very good. I didn't think it was the best set of the weekend or anything like that. I just thought it was a really solid set. I was a little spent because I think I was so into No Spin that it was going to be a tough act to follow, but I thought they did a workman-like job, and I enjoyed it. I think the future is really bright for them, and I think that, they're going to go back in the studio. They seem to have a very firm lineup in place with Kristen on vocals. And I just expect, they looked like they were having a really good time out there. And that, I think, resonated with the crowd as well.
Yeah, I love the 50-50 kind of vocals when you have male and female back and forth. And this was Kristen's first of 2 performances on this evening, and she sounded fantastic. They had brought on Gabrielle Gozzi, who is the vocalist for Eternal Idol, Fallen Sanctuary. He was filling in for Michele Goitoli, who is also the other male singer from Visions of Atlantis. And then you had Marco Pastorino, who plays lead guitars, who's also throwing in his vocals. So it was really kind of like a 3-person vocal performance, and it was outstanding. Just super melodic, super fun. Loved hearing Start Another Round. That's such a fun tune. No Return was another highlight for me. Really good stuff. I enjoyed this a lot, and like you said, yeah, I think this the sky's the limits for this band, and I think Kristen has such a different kind of vocal that you're used to hearing that is really refreshing to hear. And I thought she really did a hell of a job here. And then coming back out, an hour and a half later or 2 hours later to do another set, definitely she did a hell of a job. So this was great. I enjoyed this a lot. I was, high on my list of bands I wanted to see, and did not disappoint. Enjoyed it a lot.
You hear so many bands with those soprano vocals, and Kristen is not that. She's a much lower register, but it works. You don't need to have every single person sounding like Sharon Den Adele, which is not a bad thing. There's so many great vocalists out there in that style, but you, I think, hit the nail on the head with the word refreshing. It's refreshing to hear somebody who's not in that style, as good as they may be. And I think Kristen certainly fits that bill. I did not see Earthside. It was the one band where I completely missed it. I mentioned how I saw 3 songs from Victorious. I saw nothing from Earthside because I went to go get pizza, I'll be completely honest. And I did not get it at the venue. We went to a place called Antico, which is one of the best, pizza places in Atlanta. Wound up buying way too much and then brought pies back to everybody down below stage, including Milton, who was very hungry that night. But I digress. Did you see Earthside? And if you did, tell me about it, because I know nothing about this set.
I watched the entire thing, and it was weird. It was a weird set. Like, the keyboard player I was so excited to see a keyboard player, and he was bouncing off the walls, doing, playing the guitar, but like air strumming the guitar like an air guitar. It was, and I think just the lack of live vocals is, you talk about lack of live keyboards, lack of live vocals is really, really strange. Just to have all of these, pre-recorded things. The band, technically is just incredibly put together, really well rehearsed, but it's very arty, over the top kind of prog, not really my favorite thing in the world. I'm not entirely sure why I sat and watched this entire thing. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of out there. I heard some people had some negative things to say about it, mostly I think due to the lack of any sort of live vocals, but it was a replacement of a replacement. So, it is what it is. I'd never seen the band live before, so it was interesting, but wasn't my favorite set of the weekend. I'll say that. I wouldn't say that if you'd seen them live before, I wouldn't say that you missed much.
And I have. I did see them live after the first album had come out, so they were obviously on tour, so kudos to them for filling in. I don't think I missed much. I'll probably check out some clips on YouTube just because I'm curious. But I got back in time to see the vast majority of the next set, which was Twilight Force. And I know that this was one that you were looking forward to immensely. You're wearing the shirt as we speak, so I would imagine this struck a chord with you. I'll let you do the honors on this one just because I know this was at the top of your list.
Well, I'll start with the one negative. I was standing kind of right in the middle on the floor, and I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it, but the sound on this set was muddy, and it was disappointing because it still sounded great and the band sounded awesome, and the fact that this was their first show with 3 new members of the band, I was very impressed by the energy. I thought the performances were good. It's just that I felt like the vocals were drowned out from where I was standing. What I was able to hear was Alessandro and Kristen sounded fantastic. As just amazing. The high energy songs, the fun. Thanks go out to Amanda for handing out 200 inflatable swords, and the band had brought inflatable swords to hand out, and they looked out to the crowd and they were already armed. So that was just beautiful. By the time Flight of the Sapphire Dragon started playing, they sent out a dragon-shaped pool float, which somehow managed to make it back to the stage at the end of the song unscathed. But that kind of just bounced around, probably reminded a few people of a certain Ailstorm performance. But it was just a blast. I just remember thinking to myself at the end of the set that I was sad that it was ending, because I would have loved to have heard another 20 or 30 minutes of just these just joyful, fun, just medieval style power metal tunes, symphonic power metal tunes. 3 cheers to the great Blackwald for actually playing the keyboard and doing his his narration, so to speak. It just very makes me think of one of those who's the old man from Lord of the Rings, the old
Lee?
Yeah, but the on the good guy side,
Oh, yeah. No, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, or like Dumbledore from Harry Potter, just that friendly old man in the Shire, just kind of leading your way through. But again, nice mix of songs throughout their entire discography, but particularly the newer tracks from At the Heart of Winter Vale, which I think is their best album yet. This was so much fun. I had an absolute blast, and if they headlined, I would not have complained.
Nice. I'm thrilled for you that you enjoyed it as much as you did. I saw it, like I said, and I just don't remember it well. Like, in other words, I was present, but for some reason, like, it just didn't, and I enjoyed it. Like, I would love to see them again tonight if I could, but for some reason, I don't have a lot of strong memories about this particular set vis-a-vis the rest of the performances from the fest. And again, not that it was bad. I actually liked it a lot. I just, for some reason, I'm having a trouble remembering it. And that might be because of what happened next. And that was Leprous. Now, I always was a big fan of Leprous, so I'm a little bit jaded there, but I've also come to realize that, like, the last few Leprous albums, I'm just not a fan of. I love their earlier material. And I knew that when I saw them live, they were going to be playing a bunch of new stuff. So I went in with a little bit of trepidation and kind of thinking this might not be for me. But by the time they were done, I quickly remembered why this band is so special in the prog realm. Now, I acknowledge that they don't have a Circus Maximus type of sound. It's not the most accessible sound. So I'm really curious to hear any thoughts that you might have. But I will say, I thought that for a performance, it was great, almost despite some of the material. And then they wound up playing Faceless, which is a song that not Faceless, Passing, a song that I just did not expect them to play at all, from Tall Poppy Syndrome, which is one of those early albums which I just can't get enough of. And that to me was like the entire highlight of the show, hearing a song that I just never expected them to play. Really, really good set. And again, it's not even a testament to the material. It's really just a testament to how good this band is live.
A lot of people had a lot of good things to say about the sound during Winger's set on Saturday, and don't want to take anything away from that, and we'll get to that. But this, to me, was by far the best sounding set of the entire 4 days. I was floored by how good this sounded, and much.
You're not a Lepers fan. Like, I think it's worth noting. Like,
I'll take a page out of your book earlier. I will never say that this is one of my favorite bands in the world, but wow, like live, it to me, it took all the material to another level that I could enjoy it more so than I would have listening to a record. It was just, I don't even know how to put it into words, how impressive this sounded. And also the energy of the band live, the lighting. This was, to me, like what Vola was last year. Just a visual and audio, extravaganza, just like, for lack of a better word, maybe orgasm might have been the better word, but like, just fantastic. I was so impressed. Even Amy, who is definitely not a fan of this type of music, was really impressed by this and ended up enjoying the set. I think she stood for it with Caleb, actually. So,
nice.
I think this impressed a lot of people. I'm sure there were a lot of people that were not the least bit surprised, but I was absolutely blown away. Just a great, great set. If you
have some free time, and I know it comes at a premium, I would invite you to go back and listen to the set list on disc. And I say that because I think you might have a newfound appreciation for the music having experienced the live show, because I know that I did. Like I said, I went back and I listened to some of the material from the albums, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe these albums are a little bit better than I gave them credit for, especially some of the recent stuff. So anyway, just an exercise that you might want to consider.
Well, I definitely plan on listening to their new album, and they played 4 or 5 tracks from that. So that I will do for sure.
Nice. Well, I think that will definitely be worth it. And then we go to the first melodic death metal band of the festival, the first of 2 really, and that's Dark Tranquillity. I thought they put on a good show. I thought they put on a very good show. I think they were better when I saw them on 70,000 Tons, so I had really, really lofty expectations for them. I think they fell just a touch short, but I still really enjoyed it. You can see why this band has just been a machine for the last 30 years. And if anything, it kind of just wet my whistle for the Cemetery Skyline announcement, because I think that Michael Stani is just going to be a monster with his clean vocals, let alone the growls that he often employs with Dark Tranquillity. This was another really good set from a band that is just continuing to put out good music. Their new album is very good. I strongly recommend giving that a listen as well. And I thought that this was a really nice end cap to Thursday night.
Yeah, I stuck around for this entire set, and it was very good. I think that it started to... I was starting to get fatigued probably about halfway through it, and I think for me, a lot of the songs sounded fairly similar. But I thought, like, from a musician standpoint, they really performed well. I think it was hard to follow Leprous' just wall of sound and wall of light that they... there was almost like an artisticness to it. But, you know, I have to say, one of the cool things that they added to the ProgPower presentation this year was an actual video screen right in the middle of the, where the banner or the band's banner would be, which some bands, utilized, but Dark Tranquillity actually was like playing full-blown music videos and stuff, which I think really added to the presentation. So kudos to the ProgPower crew for adding that. I think even for like bands where like a No Spoon, rather than having like, a small banner, no banner, whatever, having their logo just big and bright up there on the screen, I think was really added to it. So this was good. I personally would have flipped this set with Twilight Force, but that's just me. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with that, but this was very good. And you had told me to at least stick around for some of it, and I chose to stay for the entire thing. So good stuff.
Nice. And that puts kind of a bow on day two. Now we get to the main festival. And I kind of said to Nick about midway through Friday night, I said, what are your thoughts, as a first time attendee of this festival? And he's like, not what I expected, smaller, more intimate, yada, yada, yada. Not really committal one way or another, but you could tell he was kind of enjoying himself. And his opinion by the end of Saturday would be very, very different. Not different, but would be very concrete, but we'll get there. But I say that because Friday night kicks off the main festival, and we start with Stryker, a band that going into the festival I was really lukewarm about. I hadn't really been familiar with their stuff, but as I listened to them throughout the course of the year, including their new album, I was excited for this set. And I don't know that some of the folks that I was spending time with, like Ralph and Pat, were kind of into this or looking forward to it, but they put on a really good show. I don't think it was the best set of the weekend, but I thought that they were a high energy opener and a good way to kind of kick off the festival.
Yeah, this was a blast. Just high energy guys. I got a kick out of I think it was the guitar player who was wearing the yellow what do you want to call it? I don't know if it wasn't a onesie. I guess it was just like a very yellow tank top. I think that was Pete. Oh, that was the bass player, Pete Klassen. I mean, it's just like kind of a 80s hued, kind of, melodic, hard rock type of band. Imagine like Eclipse, but like put it in a Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack.
With a bit more of an edge, I would say.
Yeah, so it was just fun, just a fun, high energy, great choice to open things out. I think the line of that set was when they said their saxophone guy got a DUI and couldn't make it for Give It All, which is a very saxophone heavy tune. But this was fun. I thought that the choices for openers on Friday and Saturday both were really great ways to kind of open those two nights.
Yeah, we'll certainly get to Frozen Crown in a bit. Did you have a chance to check out Fifth Angel, who came on next?
I did. I watched the first 3 tracks from the pit, took a couple of pictures, and I stayed for their I think I saw all their set. I might have bounced out real quick to get a drink or something like that, but this was just really solid, just traditional heavy metal. I really enjoyed the older tunes, but they played a couple of tracks from When Angels Kill, which is their most recent album, and it's funny because listening to the albums prepping, there was such a drastic difference between listening to like 1985 Fifth Angel versus 2024 Fifth Angel, and live it all kind of fit together nicely because it was the same band. So it made for a really fun set. This was kind of in my bottom tier of bands that I was looking forward to seeing, but I thought they put on a really good show. It was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad you said that, because as I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm having a little trouble discerning whether this is the old or the new, but on disc, I'm like, it's so obvious, not just because of the production, but the songwriting and everything else. But somehow live, it blends together nicely, and I thought it was a pretty good set. Not my favorite, but definitely deserved to be on the stage. But in many ways, it was just serving as an appetizer for me for Elegy. Elegy was the third band that played. They were the band that I was sponsoring. They're a band that I've been looking forward to seeing for years. And I knew what the set list was. I was cautiously optimistic that it was going to be a really good set. I was up front for the whole thing, and it was every bit as good as I could have expected. The band was tight, but more importantly, I thought Ian Parry was phenomenal as a front man. He was bouncing around, he was jumping around, he was getting the crowd into it, and I thought he sounded great. Now, mind you, I was up front, so I had a very different vantage point and sound stage than most people that were in the venue for that particular set. But it was such a pleasure to finally get to see this band. And they did the no-no. They did the one thing that you're not supposed to do, and that is they stayed on the stage a little bit too long. And I say that because they played their full set, but their full set really isn't an hour. So they were basically just stayed out there and played an extra song at the end, which I don't know what they're supposed to do. But they did it, and I was happy because I got to hear both the songs from Manifestation of Fear, and I just thought it was just a really fun, high-energy set. And then I'll just mention it now before I hear your thoughts, but they were the nicest guys, like the nicest guys. So afterwards, and I'll never forget this, I'm going downstairs, we're kind of bullshitting with them outside the dressing room, and Ian Parry's like, are you guys thirsty? Do you guys want a beer? And so Ian Parry walks us into the dressing room and hands me a Yingling. And like, if that's all I need, right? Hand me a Yingling. I'm a happy guy. But we were talking about the first time they played the U.S. many, many decades ago. It was, I think, the Cleveland show that there was some festival there, and how this time around things are just so much different for the band and how excited they were to be there and everything else. And I'll tell you a funny story, but I will not say it on the podcast, but a really funny story that they told us, but that is a story for another time. But just all great guys, great set. I just hope that they continue to put out new music, and I really, really hope this is not the last time I see them.
It was a good weekend for UK-based lead singers that at one point were on an Arion album, because Ian Parry, I didn't really know what to expect, but I was blown away by how strong his vocals, just like the power of his vocals was so impressive. And literally the first thing the man did when he walked out on the stage was grab my two hands and just grab me by like the two palms of my hands. I hope somebody found a picture of that. I just thought it was just so like wild. This guy just like comes out and just grabs me by the hands. I'm like, yes, I will watch your whole set now. Like,
does he know he's the subject of a high school documentary from 30 years ago, but I digress.
Yeah, seriously. He told me he sent his power through me and says, like, you will watch our entire set. I was like, yes, sir,
yes,
Mr. Parry. Mr. Parry, I will do whatever you wish. And they were great. I didn't know the songs as well as I would have liked going into it, but it didn't really matter. It sounded great. It was fun hearing Manifestation of Fear after reviewing the album with you last year, and Frenzy as well. Yeah, just a great set. Fun throwback, and just it was great seeing Pat just back in his element after missing last year, and just marking out. I think he texted me at one point and asked me if I had any video footage of this band playing, because all of his involved him screaming. So,
yeah, I was in my heaven. This was easily one of the best sets of the weekend for me, and it was just an absolute honor and a privilege to see them. And the night would not end there. Soen would take the stage next. Another band that I'm so curious about your thoughts on if you saw it, because this is a band like Leprous that is not the most accessible thing in the world, but I think they put on such a good live show that I get excited every time I see them. And I thought this performance was excellent as well. I thought it too sounded very good. And if Soen's in town, go see them. I don't think there was anything special per se about this particular set. I just thought it was a really good Soen set, and this is a band that I've now seen live 5 times, and it never gets old for me.
I missed their first ProgPower appearance, so this was actually the first time I'd ever seen them live, and I thought it was very good. I just think that it unfortunately had kind of the Leprous show from the day before to live up to, and I just don't think anybody was going to, at least from like a prog sound quality point of view. But that said, this was very good. I think I had made my way up to the VIP bar at one point and watched the set from the second floor on the side of the stage for a bit. I'm not sure what the singer's name is, but I thought his vocals are outstanding. I remember you texted me at one point and just said, "I'm proud of you for sticking around for this." And I was like, I haven't missed anything up to this point for the most part. So I was like, I'm not gonna miss this. And I'll tell you, one of the things that helps is, the place where we were staying at is a couple of miles away from the venue. So like, rather than, walk back and then not feel a high desire to rush back to the venue or just have to take an Uber back and forth, I just found myself coming to the venue and just staying there until I was done and then leaving, and that was it. I made one venue trip per day, and pretty much stayed the whole time.
No point in getting your steps in between sets, and it kind of forces you in many ways to watch bands that you might not have otherwise watched. And you know what? That's okay, because I'm glad you stayed for it. It seemed like you enjoyed it enough for what it was, even though I don't think you're running out to go buy their entire discography necessarily, but you can appreciate why, especially those vocals are just intoxicating in many ways. And much like Fifth Angel was kind of an appetizer in many ways for Elegy, I think Soen probably served as an appetizer for you for Love Bites. The floor is yours, my friend. What did you think?
This was mind blowing, and I think part of it had to do with the crowd. The crowd was absolutely jam packed on the floor, really, really into it, and I just think that these women brought it. They were so good. They brought so much energy, and I was loving the fact that this was I'm fairly certain, 99%. Certain this was the first time an all female band had played on the ProgPower stage before, and I thought that was such a cool thing. Just and they were excellent. Like, this was not a gimmick. Like, these are women who can really, really just play, and the singing was great. The guitar work was excellent. The drumming was phenomenal. Like, this was just an outstanding U.S. debut from a band that I think has only just touched on their popularity in this country, and I was really floored by this. And I got to go up front for the first couple of tracks and got some fun pictures, and I ran into the ladies backstage after Amorphous' set, and they just happened to all be standing right outside their dressing room lined up, and I couldn't resist getting a photo with them in which I look like an absolute ogre in the middle of these petite Japanese women. but they were so sweet. They couldn't have been nicer. I wish them all the best on their, I don't even know. I get if their current U.S. tour is already over. I feel like the last week I've just been kind of like in a cave, trying to recover from being sick. But I had, this was one of the sets I was most looking forward to, and it was probably one of my very favorites of the weekend. I just thought this was an absolute blast, and I think that the excitement of the crowd added to it. There was just something in the air about their first show and the first all-female band to play at ProgPower, and I just think that all the intangibles were in effect, and it made for a really, really enjoyable, hour and 15 minutes I think they played.
When I was downstairs with Elegy, I saw them walking through the hallway, and I immediately thought to myself, wow, they're like really tiny. Like they're just very small in stature, but they certainly weren't small in stature on the stage. I thought that I'm never going to say that this is my favorite band again, like I used the analogy earlier, but I can certainly appreciate a good performance, and I thought they put on a good show. The crowd was absolutely bananas. I don't know that the crowd was any more wild as they were during this set for the entire weekend. I feel bad that they probably have a stiff neck looking up at you for that picture, because my God, it looked like they were trying to climb a tree. But at that being said, kidding aside, good performance. And you said it, I think they're only scratching the surface in this country. Just given how rabid that fan base was for this set, I can only imagine how successful they will be going forward, because it's not a gimmick. They are proficient, and if you like the music, they can certainly bring it live. So kudos to them.
Yeah, and they actually played longer at ProgPower than they did at their own headline shows after ProgPower, which is pretty awesome. So
really?
we got 16 songs, whereas the other US shows got like closer to 13 or 14. So cool stuff. They played 3 shows after this in Dallas, LA, and San Francisco, and I believe that was it. I guarantee you we have not seen the last of this band in the US. Just really, really killer stuff. And I think now that they might have a better idea of what their reach is, so to speak, I think that they'll be back sooner than later.
I agree. And I think that after the energy that they put forth, you needed a band to follow them that could keep people's attention. Amorphous blistered through a greatest hits set, which was nothing short of remarkable. They are a bona fide headliner. They had previously played the festival approximately 14 renditions prior, 14 or 15 years prior, whatever it was. I actually had missed that year, but I'd seen Amorphous many times since then. But it was so good to see them on the big stage. And despite some of the issues that the band may have been having at the time, which I'll leave that there, I'll say that the performance itself was phenomenal. The set list was phenomenal. And how could you just not enjoy this set? I don't know. They were great.
I got the pleasure of seeing the entire set in front of the rail due to an illness that was suffered by one of the other sponsors. So that was kind of a nice little bonus for me. And it's like one of those, sometimes you stand there and you're that close to the stage and the sound just goes over your head. And that was not the case here. They sounded, even from up front, outstanding. And I expected nothing less from this band. This is always just a really strong live band, and I think in this room with this like rabid audience, they really brought it. It was a great set and a great way to end things. And I was, my dogs were barking at the end of this set because I made it through pretty much the entire day without missing almost any songs. It was quite the marathon for me. I was a little less present the following day, but this was a hell of a day. And 6 bands that couldn't be more different as you walk down that list, and they all put on such a great, unique performances. Really, really great day, start to finish.
Yeah, and for my money, I was kind of looking forward to Friday more than I was Saturday, although there was a couple of artists on Saturday that I was really looking forward to. But Saturday didn't disappoint either, and in many ways was the more pleasant surprise of the 2 days, which for reasons we'll get to shortly. It started with the band that you, in fact, were sponsoring, which was Frozen Crown.
Well, I'll cut you off. You didn't happen to see Soto and Beeler, did you?
I did not, but I can tell you that by all accounts, they put on a good show. It was that afternoon, like, VIP Go Bad show. I didn't see it, but I heard it was a good show, more of the same from those guys, but I did not see it.
I got a blurb from our friend Patrick Celsus, and he said, Soto Beeler was a crap ton of fun. Soto and Beeler both singing together, and Beeler also carrying guitar. We were treated to fun covers and reimaginings of several songs ranging from their back catalog to rock and metal classics to Love Boat, all intertwined with the two talking mad shit to each other. We as an audience were very into it, alternating between clapping, singing along, and laughing our collective asses off. So it sounds like it was fun. They played YMCA, and they played, songs from Talisman and Saigon Kick. They covered Ozzy's Diary of a Madman, Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden, Don't Stop Believin' by Journey, and they finished with Sweet Home Alabama from Lynyrd Skynyrd. So it sounds like it was a lot of fun. I just, you have to, I don't know, you have to take a break somewhere, and I guess that was my break. So, it sounds like fun, and I'm very curious to see what the special Loft show will be next year, because that has not been announced yet.
Yeah, fair point. I usually go to this show, that Saturday afternoon show, but I just didn't go to this one. I recharged and I was ready to go for Frozen Crown. The band you sponsored, was it everything you expected? I know that they may not be your favorite band, but by the end of this set, I have a feeling that they were much higher up the list than you maybe even anticipated yourself.
Yes, they made me a bigger fan from this set. I thought that I did recognize all the songs, thankfully. But the way that they performed it with the 3-guitar attack, and I just thought it was such a well-performed set from some really outstanding musicians and even better people. I had the opportunity to get to talk to the band, and they could not be more gracious after their set. I mean, I've seen situations where, the band wants to decompress after a set, and they might say, hey, like, we want to wait 30 minutes, 45 minutes where we meet somebody. They were like, give us 15 minutes, and then you could literally come into our dressing room, which was, they had a smaller dressing room. It was just like a box. And they came, they signed whatever you wanted to have signed. I talked to Jade about taxes and driving in Italy and how much gas prices are, to which Sheena came up to us and was like, are you guys really talking about taxes and gas? And Jade was laughing and at one point made a joke that I was younger than her, which, as somebody who's 7 years her senior, was probably one of the nicest things anyone could have said to me at that point in time. Every single member of the band could not have been nicer. I enjoyed the hell out of their set and them as people backstage. This was a blast. Their US debut, hoping it won't be a while before we see them come back. I'm excited for their new album that's coming out later this year. But much like Vanishing Point, a band that I knew of, but wasn't the biggest fan of. Once I saw them live and met them, they became one of my favorite bands, and I think it'll be similar for Frozen Crown as well. They were really just outstanding. Nice.
Even though I slept well, like I said, the fatigue had kind of hit me. It was that 2:00 period where, much like at work, kind of hit you in that right after lunch type of thing. So I watched this set, but I watched the whole thing, but I don't know that I was like mentally present for it. So I was enjoying it for what it was, but I wasn't like totally into it. But the crowd was, by and large, was into it. So I think that you're not alone in your assessment, and I think that not only was the crowd into it, but after the show, they were everywhere. Like everywhere I looked, I felt like I was seeing members of this band. So kudos to them for enjoying it and kind of soaking up their first experience in the U.S. And I also agree. I don't think this is the end for them. Really, just the beginning in many ways. I know that you missed Disillusion, the next band, so I'm going to fill in a gap here because I saw them on 70,000 Tons and it was good, but when I saw them, they were playing such a small room. They were playing that lounge room, which is the worst venue on the ship. So I was really looking forward to seeing them on the big stage. And I don't know that I had huge expectations, but I did have a curiosity that went along with this band. I was a big fan of their first album, Back to the Times of Splendor. But after that, I just didn't spend a lot of time with some of their newer material. So even though I was familiar with them, I don't think I knew the album as well as I knew the old stuff. But that being said, I thought this performance was fantastic. They sounded great. They brought the energy. It was a different type of prog than we had heard earlier in the festival with Leprous and So, and they were more aggressive. They kind of cleans and growls and that sort of a thing, or just harsher vocals. And so tight, just so tight. This was one of the more pleasant surprises of the weekend. And for those that maybe didn't get a chance to see them or really didn't have high expectations, I have a feeling that those were not only met but exceeded by this performance.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I heard some of it through the walls. And then I believe I went and grabbed something to eat towards the end of their set. So I ended up missing pretty much all of it. And again, like you mentioned, like I had definitely been starting to hit like kind of the empty battery syndrome, where I just was like, oh man, I don't know how much more of this I can take. It's just so much. Mind you, I had been saw 3 bands the previous Monday, and then joined you for a baseball game on Tuesday. So like I was on night 6 in a row of live events. So I think that like there was a point of me that could have been like, if I don't go back into that venue, I might not see another note of music this day. So I forced myself back in there and to check out Illumishade, and I got up front for their first couple of tunes with you and Nick to take a couple of pictures, and but I guess I just needed a breather. But I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed Disillusion. They were at the bottom of my list of bands I was most looking forward to seeing. So if there had to be a band that I missed because I was hobnobbing with the band I sponsored, I mean, that really was the kind of the best case scenario for me. But I'm glad one of us caught it and one of us could speak to it. And it sounds like everybody that saw them, Tyler especially, were very impressed by this.
Definitely. And I had the pleasure of watching much of it with him, actually. And the both of us, I think, were just really enjoying ourselves and kind of very present in the moment. But I also saw Illumishade next. I thought that they were good. I hoped that they might be a little bit better, but they were good. I thought that, I don't know, something about this set just, maybe it was the lack of live keys. If memory serves, I don't think they had live keys. I thought, but I could be wrong about that.
They did.
Did they? Okay. All right. Well, something about this set was amiss. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it, but I guess I had high expectations because I had heard that they are just so good live, and I thought it was good. I don't know that it was great, but I do think that their new album is fantastic. It was nice to hear some of those songs live, and I think that it's going to wind up being high up on my year-end list just because I thought the release was that good. And this is another band that I think has a tremendous amount of potential that they're really just tapping into now. So as long as elevating touring doesn't get in the way, this band has the ability to blow up as well.
Yeah, I enjoyed this quite a bit. I thought that Fabienne's vocals were outstanding. I especially enjoyed getting to hear Rise, which I think is a really beautiful track. And I recorded a segment of that just because it's one of my favorite songs by the band. But I enjoyed this a lot, and it kind of sucked me back into the live music mentality after taking a 90-minute break from it.
Yeah, I definitely happy that I saw it. I don't have any regrets or anything like that. And if they come back, I would definitely go see them live again. So I don't want to make it sound like I didn't enjoy it. It was just, I think I had super high expectations that maybe were a tad short, but still all in all, a good time. And then after that, Damian Wilson played for 75 minutes. And we have not talked about this set. I am so curious as to your thoughts, not only about his vocal stylings, but just the performance itself, because this was unlike anything that we would see the entire weekend. Literally see the entire weekend.
So I had made my way to the side of the right side of the venue and found myself a front row seat and just put my feet up on the metal barrier and just was like, you know what, this is my spot for the rest of this evening, and I'm just gonna sit back. My feet can't take any more. I'm just gonna sit back and watch the rest of this and just enjoy this. And Damian Wilson, for my money, came out and performed my favorite set of the entire 4 days, singing half songs that I didn't even know, and just absolutely blowing me away with not only his vocal prowess, but his absolute stage presence and his ability to connect with a crowd. And that's without having to dive into them 3 times, which he did in fact do, not to mention during the landmark cover Forever Young, walk through the crowd, which parted like the Red Sea down the middle, climb up into the nosebleeds where, you know, a young person might have once watched a Cactus Jack match years back. And he just commanded the crowd, all the while having one of the most impressive vocal performances I'd ever heard on that stage. Not to be outdone, this group that he brings together, Vikram Shankar, keyboard player from Redemption, James Nelson, who we mentioned earlier, guitar player for No Spoon, and a couple of members, I believe, from the band Lux Terminus, who is another one of the bands that Vikram is a part of. They were outstanding. The fact that this group rehearsed one time the day before, and the band was outstanding. Like, hearing these Arion songs, I mean, it's the next best thing than actually having like Arjen and you know his band of misfits from the Netherlands playing it live. This was just out, like, on all levels, was an unbelievable experience, and Damien just gave 100% of himself to that crowd, and the crowd just ate it up. It was just outstanding. I mean, opening up with Into the Black Hole from Arion, into Part of Chaos from Threshold, Sane Life from Headspace, Forever Young from Landmark, and The Druids Turn to Stone by Arion, Clear by Threshold, Die with a Bullet from Headspace, and then ending with Sanity's End from Threshold and Embrace from Landmark. I mean, it was a short set list in comparison to what he had done on the same show in Europe. Playing maybe closer to 15 or 16 tracks. So a good bit of, you know, his solo material was absent and some other stuff. But I think this is what this crowd really wanted to hear from that selection of songs. And I think the song selection was outstanding. I mean, I have nothing but great things to say. This was outstanding. And I also remember thinking to myself, man, Winger's got to follow this. Yeah, just outstanding. Will go down as one of the most memorable sets I've ever seen in my history of attending the festival.
It is hard for me to add anything to that because I thought you said it so poignantly, but I'll maybe reiterate a couple of things. The man went into the crowd 3 times and jumped into the crowd, and he didn't waste any time because in the middle of the first song, he was crowd surfing. And I heard 1 or 2 people literally say, you know, that it was taking away from the band members themselves, and I completely disagree for a couple of reasons. First of all, the band members were so tight that, as you mentioned, unforgettable performance by a bunch of musicians that came together like the day before. That's number one. Number two, this is not Threshold. This is not Landmark. This was not any of his other bands. This was the Damian Wilson show. And a Damian Wilson who gave his heart and soul, and I mean that in terms of you could see the performance on his face and his mannerisms and how much effort he was putting into this. The man could do whatever he wanted. This was his show, and God bless him for engaging the crowd the way he did. I don't think it took away from anything. I thought it was funny how when he was doing the band introductions, he forgot one of the players' names. That to me was funny, but it was also, I think, there was an innocence there about how special the show was because he didn't even know he was playing with and the show was fucking sick, right? So like that to me was a plus, if anything else. And he told a story about how he mistaked, or he didn't have Russell Allen's name right when he introduced him at an Arion show. So like he's got a history of doing this, but I thought the show was just absolutely fantastic. I may never see Arion live. I hope I do, but this, at least I can go to sleep knowing I at least heard a couple of tunes and they were done to perfection, let alone the other stuff. And Sanity's End with Damian Wilson will go down as one of the craziest things I've ever seen because I've been listening to Paradox for decades. And quite frankly, we covered it early on in the show's archives. So great performance, exceptionally well done. I can only hope to see him again. And
and not to mention, like, person of the festival, like he was everywhere for the, I don't know if this goes back to Wednesday, but like almost every single day I saw him outside shaking hands, taking photos, talking to people, engaged. He was so happy to be there. No joke, during Love Bite's set, I was standing on the floor trying to figure out if there was anywhere for me to move to, and I turn around and he's literally standing directly behind me. And I just to go and shake his hand. He shakes my hand like a firm, manly handshake that only Damian Wilson can give you. And we just turned around and went back, to our business watching the band. Like, he was everywhere. Every time, if I was sitting up in the stands, I'd look down and he's just in the crowd. Like, he was like all in on this weekend, and I thought that was.
You might have had a better time than I did. I'll be completely honest with you. Yeah.
Like, not only was he like the man of the hour, but he also, I think, had the best set of the weekend. Like, he was the MVP of ProgPower 2024, in my opinion.
I agree. I thought it was that good, and Winger would go on next. They would play Pull in its entirety, and the biggest compliment that I can give Winger is that I was totally engaged and engrossed in this set after Damian Wilson's performance. Like, they could have lost me. I could have gone back to the hotel. I was not looking forward to Pagan's Mind. I'll get there. But I could have easily been like, I'm getting ready to fold it in. Let me go pack. I have to get up for an early flight. I watched every second of Winger's set. They sounded phenomenal, and I have no point of reference. I've never seen them live, but you could see that they worked their asses off to kind of get this performance in tow, and that this was not your typical Winger set for obvious reasons. I don't know that it was something I needed to see in my life because I was just never a huge fan, but I'm glad that I did because I'll remember it. Kip Winger's brother was on stage with him, which was awesome. The band was just so engaging, and I thought that they were just so tight that you can see why this band blew up when they did, because in many ways, a hair band as they were, guys like Rod Morgenstein are world-class musicians. They just happened to be playing what was hot at the time, and fortunately for them, struck gold and made some money off of it. But like, the sum of the parts here is definitely greater than some of that early Winger material. But this album has those proggy elements that we discussed, and ultimately, I'm happy that I stayed for the set. I'm glad that I got to see this entire thing, and credit to them for not, crumbling after that incredible Damian set.
Yeah. Listen, there were a lot of people scratching their heads when this was announced, and a lot of people, I think, stuck to their guns over the course of a year and were continuing to question this. And I can't even imagine the elation that Glenn Harveston must have had to just be able to, at the end of the set, say, fuck you to anybody who questioned his choice, because this was, for something that I was not even that excited about seeing, was outstanding. And if it wasn't for Leprous, it would have been the best sounding set of the whole weekend, in my opinion. This was a professional band that got up there. They, according to Glenn, found the exact same soundboard that they use at center stage and practiced with it so that they could. Yep. So that they could.
Wow.
That's how serious that they took this. On 2 separate occasions, Kip stopped the song and started it over because the sound wasn't the way it should have been, and he wanted the whole song to be played the way that it should, which I thought was really awesome. Like, no, well, let's do it right. Not in a diva sort of way, not in an asshole sort of way, but in a I can't hear my brother's guitar here. Let's start over and do it right. Like, let's do it the way it should be done. 2 songs that the band had never played live ever, may never play again. I think Kip even said, this is probably the only time this is ever going to happen. Thankfully, we did the album about a year ago, right around this time last year. And so I was familiar with the entire album, and I got to hear Headed for a Heartbreak and Easy Come, Easy Go, which are the 2 popular Winger songs that I really enjoy. They spared us and didn't play 17. So all in all, this was a very successful set, and a lot of people were raving about this, and rightfully so. This was, this is something that somebody should have probably been filming for a DVD or a Blu-ray. It was just that kind of professional, really, really great stuff. And, I could see why Glenn wanted to have it happen. And if I had a nostalgia for this album, it would have taken it to a whole other level for me. But just as somebody sitting there who appreciates live music, I enjoyed the hell out of this. And this was, other than Leprous, these 2 were the big surprises, I think, for me of the weekend.
And now when I didn't for next year, you'll be all on board, right?
Right. I mean, I didn't think they were going to suck by any means, but I just figured it would just be, a show that, people who grew up listening to Winger and appreciated Pull from when it was released would be more into. But I think that they sucked in the whole crowd. This was, and like you said, to follow Damian Wilson's set, with the set this strong, just absolute, just pure professionalism all the way through. This was, a big surprise, I think, for me and a lot of people, but, it's just great stuff. And I'm glad that I stuck around for it, because I feel like if I'd missed it, I would have been oh yeah, I missed it, whatever. I don't think I would have known what I missed without having actually seen it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. Believe me, I do. And then having the nightcap and the end of the festival with a crowd favorite, a band in Pagan's mind that, I make no bones about. I've never really been a huge fan of. I think it would be an interesting experience to go and do one of their albums potentially on the podcast, because other than Celestial Entrance, which I know very, very well and happen to like it, the rest of the albums never resonated with me. And I'd be curious to go back. I had really no intentions of watching this set or all of this set, but I wound up staying for the whole thing, which to this day, I'm a little surprised that I did. I know you didn't, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'll kind of fill in the loose ends once you're done. But how much of the set did you see, and why did you leave?
I lost track of how many tracks it was because I don't know their songs that well. I definitely remember hearing Aegean Shores, because that was one of the songs I was really hoping to hear. And I may have stuck around for 1 or 2 tracks after that. Not really anything against the band whatsoever. I thought they sounded really good, but I just had reached my absolute end point. And being that they're not one of my favorite bands in the world, I wasn't willing to stick around until they played through Osiris's Eyes or Walk Away in Silence, which they didn't end up playing at all. So good thing I didn't stick around waiting for that. But I was just, I was tired. I was worn out. I definitely was getting the sense that I might be getting sick. So I was just I put in a hell of an effort. I've seen just about everything there is to see up to this point. I think with any hope, Justin will watch the rest of the set and fill in the blanks for me. And unlike last year where we missed like chunks of stuff, including all of day one, I think we really pretty much got all of it. So please tell me how you enjoyed the rest of the set. I will say the little I heard was really good, and the crowd was really into it, and they just were never one of my favorite bands in the world. So like I probably would have powered through if it was Circus Maximus or Twilight Force or Love Bites or one of the bands that were really at the top of my list of excitement level. But I at least I showed up this time, which I can't say for the last time Pagans when I played at ProgPower. So
fair enough. As I said, I had no intention of watching this set, but curiosity kept getting the best of me. And on the downside, I don't think that I never was a huge fan of Nils's vocals. I thought the music on Celestial Entrance was so good that I almost enjoyed it despite the vocals, which I was lukewarm at best about. I think that some of the stuff that he does on albums, though, is really hard to do. Not that I particularly love it, but it's just hard to do. And I thought that maybe the lack of performing over the last 6 years, I don't know that his voice is what it was, for better or worse, 8, 10, 12 years ago. And that's a shame, but very few people are Jeff Tate where they can still sing like it's 1987. So that being said, vocals aside, I thought the band was exceptionally tight. And it was really the band which kept me there for that entire performance. They did something about midway through the set where they did an instrumental medley of songs in the catalog. There's about 3 or 4 songs where they took lengthy instrumental sections, seamlessly spliced them together, and just made this long instrumental track without a name. It was just bits and pieces of other songs, and it was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed every second of it. I was like totally into it. I couldn't believe how tight it was. And then by the time those came back, it was like, this is a really good performance. I'm, again, not my favorite of the weekend, but it was enough to keep me there. And I feel like I have to give this band a second shot because despite some of the issues that I have with them, it was a great show. Some of these songs are really good. And, you talked about like Through Osiris's Eyes and stuff like that. I mean, that's a great song. Aging Shores, great song, like no doubt about it. And the production on the albums is good, and so is their live show. So all in all, I'm happy that I stayed for it, and that really put a bow on the entire fest.
And that's why next week we are doing a Pagan's Mind career retrospective.
Not with me as a guest host of the show, I'll tell you that. No, kidding aside, I turned to Nick at the end of the night. I said, what did you think, right? Like I figured what better way to recap our experience than with somebody who's never been to this festival. And his response was, I'm planning on coming back next year, because he was like, I had the time of my life. And it was just, obviously we're not getting into details about other things outside of the music, but all in all, it was just such a fun weekend. And I think that he had a phenomenal time, and in many ways it was different than he expected, but in many ways I think it was better than he expected. And so for that, I think, the festival made a new fan in him, and needless to say, we'll be, maybe talk about some of the bands for next year on our next bonus Patreon episode. I think that will be an interesting look. And obviously, over the course of the next year, our feelings may change, but just to give those initial impressions, I think would be interesting. So that's something that the Patreon folks can look forward to. But all in all, I thought that the band sounded great. I thought that the bands put on very good performances. And I thought for a ProgPower, which on paper was not my favorite in terms of lineup, I left kind of with the feeling like it was one of the better festivals that they've had in recent memory, which is really impressive, because I was not expecting to say that going into the weekend.
Absolutely agree. And I think that it's easier for me to say that because I saw most of it. And so I think that when you actually see most of the music, you're really seeing how good these bands are, despite how varied and different they are from one another. And so I agree with you completely. I want to throw out a couple of shout outs to the venue. I thought having some of the autograph signings in the vendor room, I think really helped with the congestion within the food and bathroom and bar areas of Center Stage. Having water available at all times at no charge to everybody, I think is great. I don't think I waited to use the bathroom for longer than 30 seconds at any one point. It just the whole thing is just this well-oiled machine. There's rarely ever a longer than 30-minute break in between bands. The food at the venue was excellent, and that really also helped keep me in the venue, knowing that I could get a good meal. Shout out to the rice bowls and the quesadillas, good stuff. It was. I just had the best time, and a little collateral damage in the form of COVID for the second time for me is a willing sacrifice just to have such a good time. It was my time to get COVID again, as I think that's just become the norm, unfortunately. But it wasn't so bad. I think I'm like almost. You probably could hear I'm a little bit nasal, but I feel all right, and that's why this episode got delayed a little bit. But I wanted to not sound like death for this one, so it was fun kind of reliving it. But I will say, I feel like I used to really dread ProgPower ending when I was younger, and now it's kind of like, oh, I'm glad, I got it all out of my system, and I saw all the stuff I wanted to see, and I actually find it almost a relief for it to be over, because it's work, not bad work, it's good work, it's work you enjoy, but it's work. You're on your feet, you're up late, you're up early, it's a lot, and so that being said, I totally went and saw Unleash the Archers and the Powerwolf the following evening on an empty tank of gas. Unleash the Archers sounded great as always, and Powerwolf sounded great too. But man, I got about a third into Powerwolf set, and I had to go sit down. I was like, I am tapped. My battery is on empty, and I did all I could do. I crammed all I could do into 7 days. I saw 27 bands, I think, over the course of 7 days, and a baseball game. So
a valiant effort. And it's funny because all these tours are now coming through New York, and admittedly, I am not going to see any of them. I got tickets to shows being offered to me left and right, not for any reason other than schedules not working out and that sort of a thing. And here I am.
I've seen just a lot of people got sick in Atlanta, and so they had tickets to go see, Dark Tranquility or Leprous or whatever, and they're like, anybody want this? I'm a little feeling a little under the weather. All I could think about, literally on the same day, Dream Theater tickets and Trans-Siberian Orchestra tickets went on sale at the exact same time, and all I could think of is the last thing on my mind right now is attending a live concert. I am still recovering from the last one, so I will make decisions about those two shows both making their way through Raleigh at a later date. But right now, all I want to think about is laying down, sleeping, and laying down some more.
Well, I'm going to let you do that. And I'll just say I did get Dream Theater tickets. They're playing Radio City again, and I wasn't going to wait. So that's something to be to look forward to, but that's next year. But next week, we would have done this album on its 25th anniversary, which was my intent, but we'll push it back to 25 years and 1 week. But I will divulge next week's album. It is a band that we have not covered on the podcast. It is a band that is playing ProgPower next year, but it is not their new album. It is their classic Far Off Grace, going back to September 16th of 1999. And of course, the band is Vanden Plas. I am shocked that we are 227 episodes into this podcast and have not covered this band, because they've always been a favorite of mine. But it is definitely time, and no better way than to celebrate the anniversary of the album, which really got me into the band 25 years ago.
It's time to talk about some Idiotic Rain. Let me tell you, I've been waiting 200 plus episodes. This is a band I've always just enjoyed. Maybe like a shade under Circus Maximus for me, but definitely ahead of Pagan's Mind. If we're going to talk about kind of prog metal, stalwarts, if I may use that word. but I probably don't know this album nearly as good as I should outside of a couple of select tracks. So this will be fun to dive into and kind of listen to closer than I probably have in the past. So
with one of the most interesting ballads you'll ever hear on any album ever. I'll just leave it at that. For reasons we'll get into next week. But thanks for powering through, my friend. We are going along on this one, so we'll go back to the regular format next week. Thanks again to all of our Patreon members. We do appreciate your support and look forward to covering all your requests in the coming weeks and months. Go get some rest, my friend. It's been a fun week. I appreciate you plugging through, like I said, and look forward to catching up with you next week when we talk all things Van den Plas.
Yes, and like you said, the next bonus episode of the Patreon, or for the Patreon, we will kind of dive into next year's lineup and give thoughts and not quite ready to rank the bands yet, but we'll talk about our initial feelings about what's been announced. We have 3 of the 4 days already, announced officially. So we'll do that, and yeah, like you said, back to the regularly scheduled programming. I feel like we haven't done this in so long, so this was it was nice to get back to doing the thing again. So. Good stuff. Great prog power. One of my favorite episodes to do each year, but let's carry on and close out the year with a bang.
I like it. Stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Enjoy the week, my friend.